The synthetic limb. The morning sun cast long shadows across the disputed territory of Kepler 442b as patrol units from 3 different species maintained their uneasy ceasefire. The rocky terrain stretched endlessly with scattered mineral deposits that had drawn multiple civilizations to this remote world. Among the human contingent stationed at Forward Base Alpha, Dr. James Morrison checked his medical supplies one final time before the scheduled joint patrol with Allied forces. The Thari delegation consisted of 6 members, including their young communications specialist Kira, whose purple skin gleamed in the alien sunlight. Her species had evolved from aquatic ancestors and retained certain amphibious characteristics, including regenerative abilities that made them excellent scouts. The crystalline Valkyrie sent their usual complement of warriors whose silicon-based biology made them nearly indestructible in most combat situations. All 3 species had been working together for 6 months to establish mining rights while avoiding conflict with the aggressive Dominion forces that controlled the neighboring systems. Dr. Morrison had volunteered for this assignment despite the obvious dangers, because someone needed to provide medical support for the mixed species teams. Human medicine had advanced significantly in the past century, but treating alien biology remained challenging. Most other species maintained strict protocols about cross-species medical intervention due to biological incompatibilities and cultural taboos. The Thari in particular had strong beliefs about maintaining the natural form of their bodies and rarely accepted prosthetic enhancements. The patrol moved through the canyon system, following predetermined routes that had been cleared by engineering teams weeks earlier. Intelligence reports suggested Dominion forces had been conducting reconnaissance missions in the area, but no recent activity had been detected. The mixed unit maintained standard formation, with Valkyrie warriors taking point, while human soldiers covered the flanks and Thari scouts monitored communications channels. The operation was supposed to be routine surveillance to confirm the area remained secure for mining operations. Kira moved with characteristic grace across the uneven terrain, using her enhanced balance and coordination to navigate obstacles that would challenge other species. Her role as communications specialist required her to maintain constant contact with all 3 command centers while monitoring for any signs of hostile activity. The universal translator devices allowed seamless communication between species, but subtle nuances in meaning sometimes created minor misunderstandings. Her training included extensive study of human and Valkyrie cultural patterns to minimize such issues. The mine had been concealed beneath a layer of loose rock and appeared to be an older model from a previous conflict. When Kira stepped on the pressure plate, the explosion shattered the morning quiet and sent debris flying in all directions. The blast wave knocked near-by patrol members to the ground, while the terrible sound echoed through the canyon walls. Her lower left leg was completely severed, while her right leg suffered severe trauma that left it barely attached. Purple blood pooled rapidly beneath her as she lay unconscious from shock and pain. Dr. Morrison reached her position within moments of the explosion, despite the continued danger of additional mines in the area. His medical training took over as he assessed the extent of her injuries while applying emergency tourniquets to control the bleeding. The other patrol members secured the perimeter and called for immediate evacuation support, but the nearest medical facility was several hours away. Her vital signs were deteriorating rapidly, and conventional battlefield medicine would not be sufficient to save her life. The Thari delegation leader arrived and made it clear that their medical protocols prohibited the use of synthetic replacements for lost limbs. Their cultural beliefs emphasized the importance of natural biological integrity, and most Theri would prefer death to accepting artificial body parts. Dr. Morrison understood their position, but also recognized that Kira would not survive the journey to a proper medical facility without immediate intervention. The choice was between respecting their cultural taboos and allowing a young person to die or violating their beliefs to save her life. The portable surgical unit had been designed specifically for battlefield conditions and included several synthetic limb options that could be quickly attached and integrated with existing neural pathways. The procedure would be complex and dangerous under normal circumstances, but performing it in the field with limited resources made success uncertain. Dr. Morrison had performed similar operations on human patients, but never on a member of another species with different biological systems. The risk of rejection or complications was significant, but doing nothing guaranteed her death. As Kira drifted in and out of consciousness, Dr. Morrison prepared his equipment while the other patrol members provided security and assistance. The synthetic limbs were designed to interface with standard humanoid nervous systems, but would require careful calibration to work properly with Theri biology. Her species had evolved different neural pathways and muscle structures that would need to be mapped and accommodated during the surgical procedure. The integration process would be painful, and recovery would take weeks of physical therapy and adjustment. The Theri delegation leader watched with obvious distress as Dr. Morrison explained the procedure and its implications. Their cultural taboos ran deep, and accepting synthetic body parts was considered a form of spiritual contamination that would affect not only the individual but their entire family line. However, the alternative was watching a promising young person die from injuries that could be treated with available technology. The decision would ultimately rest with Kira herself if she regained consciousness long enough to make an informed choice about her future. The explosion had damaged more than just her legs, as internal bleeding and potential organ damage complicated the medical situation. Dr. Morrison worked quickly to stabilize her condition while preparing for the complex surgical procedure that would either save her life or end it. The other species looked on with fascination and horror as human medical technology was applied to treat injuries that would be fatal under normal circumstances. Their own medical traditions emphasized natural healing and biological regeneration rather than technological intervention. The synthetic limbs incorporated advanced neural interface technology that would allow natural movement and sensation once properly integrated with her nervous system. The materials were biocompatible and designed to last for decades with minimal maintenance or adjustment. However, the psychological impact of losing natural limbs and accepting artificial replacements could be devastating for someone from a culture that valued biological integrity above all else. Dr. Morrison knew that saving her life was only the first step in a long journey of physical and emotional recovery. The portable surgical unit hummed to life as Dr. Morrison began the delicate process of preparing the damaged tissue for synthetic limb attachment. The other patrol members maintained their security perimeter while monitoring for any signs of hostile activity that might interrupt the procedure. Canyon walls provided natural protection, but also created potential ambush points that required constant vigilance. The success of the operation would depend on maintaining stable conditions for several hours while the integration process was completed. Kira stirred briefly as the anesthetic began to take effect, and her eyes focused on Dr. Morrison with a mixture of pain and understanding. She had heard enough of the discussion to grasp the situation and the choice that lay before her. Her species valued individual autonomy and personal choice even in matters of life and death. The decision to accept synthetic limbs would affect not only her future, but her standing within Thari society and her relationships with family and friends. The neural mapping process required precise calibration to ensure the synthetic limbs would respond properly to her brain signals. Dr. Morrison worked carefully to identify the correct nerve pathways and establish the electronic connections that would allow natural movement. The Thari nervous system was similar enough to human anatomy that the basic principles applied, but subtle differences required constant adjustment and monitoring. The margin for error was small, and any mistakes could result in permanent disability or death. The integration process began with the attachment of the primary synthetic limb to replace her completely severed leg. The advanced materials bonded directly with her existing bone structure, while electronic interfaces connected to her nervous system. The procedure was experimental at best and had never been attempted on a member of her species. Dr. Morrison relied on his medical training and experience with human patients while adapting to the unique challenges of Thari biology. The second limb required even more delicate work, as the damaged tissue needed to be carefully cleaned and prepared for synthetic attachment. The explosion had caused extensive nerve damage that would need to be bypassed or repaired during the integration process. Dr. Morrison used microsurgical techniques to connect the remaining healthy tissue with the synthetic components, while ensuring proper blood flow and neural function. The complexity of the procedure pushed the limits of battlefield medicine and portable surgical equipment. Hours passed as the operation continued with careful attention to every detail that could affect the final outcome. The synthetic limbs slowly came to life as the neural interfaces established proper connections with her brain and spinal cord. Initial tests showed promising results as the artificial components responded to basic motor commands and provided sensory feedback. However, the true test would come when she regained full consciousness and attempted to use the new limbs for normal activities. The Thari delegation watched with amazement as their young colleague showed signs of successful integration with the synthetic limbs. Their cultural taboos remained strong, but witnessing the miracle of human medical technology created new perspectives on the value of artificial enhancement. The procedure had violated every principle of their traditional healing methods, but had also saved a life that would otherwise have been lost. The implications would be debated in their society for generations to come. Dr. Morrison monitored her vital signs as the operation reached its final stages, and the synthetic limbs completed their integration with her biological systems. The neural interfaces were functioning within normal parameters, and the artificial components were responding properly to brain signals. The success of the procedure would ultimately depend on her ability to adapt to the new limbs and develop the motor skills necessary for normal movement. Physical therapy would be essential for proper recovery and adjustment to her altered circumstances. The evacuation transport arrived as the surgical procedure was completed, and Kira was carefully transferred to the medical bay for ongoing monitoring and care. Her condition had stabilized, and the synthetic limbs were functioning according to specifications. The journey to the main medical facility would provide additional time for the integration process to complete and for her body to adjust to the artificial components. Dr. Morrison accompanied her to ensure continuity of care and to monitor for any complications that might arise. The successful operation became a landmark moment in interspecies medical cooperation and challenged traditional beliefs about the boundaries between natural and artificial enhancement. The Thari delegation would return to their homeworld with new perspectives on human medical technology and its potential applications for their own people. The incident would be studied and debated as an example of how different species could work together to overcome seemingly impossible challenges. Kira's recovery would take months of physical therapy and psychological adjustment as she learned to live with her new synthetic limbs. The artificial components provided excellent functionality and mobility, but required constant maintenance and occasional upgrades. Her experience would inspire other members of her species to reconsider their cultural taboos and explore the possibilities of human medical technology. The successful integration of synthetic limbs would open new avenues for interspecies cooperation and medical advancement. The mining operation continued with enhanced security measures to prevent future incidents, while the three species worked together to develop new protocols for medical emergencies. Dr. Morrison's willingness to challenge cultural taboos and risk his career to save a life had created lasting bonds between the Allied forces. The incident would be remembered as a turning point in interspecies relations and a demonstration of the value of human compassion and medical expertise. The synthetic limbs represented more than just replacement body parts, as they embodied the human commitment to preserving life regardless of species or cultural differences. The technology would be refined and improved based on the lessons learned from Kira's case, and would eventually become standard equipment for mixed species operations. The success of the procedure proved that barriers between different civilizations could be overcome through mutual respect and shared dedication to common goals. The joint patrol returned to base with a new understanding of their mission and the importance of interspecies cooperation. The explosion had been intended to divide and weaken their alliance, but had instead strengthened their bonds and demonstrated the value of working together. The incident would be studied as an example of how human ingenuity and determination could overcome seemingly impossible challenges and create new possibilities for the future. Years later, Kira would become an advocate for interspecies medical cooperation and would work to change her people's attitudes towards synthetic enhancement. Her synthetic limbs would function perfectly for decades and would serve as a testament to the skill and dedication of Dr. Morrison and the potential of human medical technology. The successful operation would be remembered as a defining moment in the relationship between humans and other species, and as proof that compassion and expertise could overcome any obstacle.